Hello, and welcome to this video explaining the connection between malaria and sickle cell. First, we need to explain what is sickle cell. Sickle cell is a genetic disease where a mutation in the hemoglobin gene causes it to misfold, thus producing a different shaped red blood cell. There are three different phenotypes of sickle cell, being homozygous dominant, producing normal healthy red blood cells, being heterozygous for sickle cell and producing only mild sickle cell disease, or being homozygous recessive for sickle cell and having fatal sickle cell disease. Now I'm going to explain the genetics of sickle cell and what happens when you cross two heterozygous parents and the chances of what their offspring's phenotype would be. So in the first quadrant, they're going to be double capital A, which means they are going to be homozygous dominant and not have sickle cell at all. When you cross these two, there's going to be two boxes that are heterozygous and carriers of sickle cell or having very mild disease. And then on the last box is going to be complete sickle cell, full blown, and a very fatal disease. Let's switch over to malaria. Malaria is an infectious disease that is caused by parasites. It is spread from mosquitoes and thus thrives in tropical areas. I am now going to explain how sickle cell provides immunity to malaria. If you are homozygous dominant for sickle cell, this means you don't have the disease, but you're still able to contract malaria through mosquitoes. Whereas if you're heterozygous for sickle cell, that means you will have some healthy red blood cells, but also some of them would be impaired, thus making it harder for the malaria to reproduce in your red blood cells. Whereas if you're a homozygous recessive for sickle cell, you have full-blown sickle cell and it would be hard to treat it. Let's refer back to the Punnett square of sickle cell. The offspring of two heterozygous parents of sickle cell will have the following cross. 25% will be dominant for sickle cell, so they won't have sickle cell, but they can still contract malaria. 50% won't catch malaria and will have very, very mild sickle cell. And the other 25% will have sickle cell. I am now going to explain what natural selection is and why sickle cell is prevalent in African American communities. Natural selection is a process by which nature removes undesirable traits out of populations. In this example, we have brown mice and gray mice. The brown mice are able to be seen by the hawk and thus they're killed and removed from the population, leaving only the gray mice to reproduce, thus leaving only gray mice left. This can be done the same with sickle cell. Those who are heterozygous from the disease won't die from sickle cell or malaria, so that only those who are heterozygous for sickle cell remain. This explains the disparity of sickle cell in African Americans. While malaria cases have dropped, sickle cell cases haven't. It's easier to remove a parasite than a genetic disorder. Now, about 1 in 13 African American babies are born with sickle cell trait. Thank you for listening to my video about the relationship between sickle cell and malaria.